Hey everybody, and welcome back to Travis's Musings, episode 4. This episode will be my year in review and look ahead to 2020. And so we got a lot of stuff packed into this episode here today. So couple housekeeping items is don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. That way you will make sure you catch all of mine and Matt's future videos that get posted up to this page. And then just a quick disclaimer, because we are going to be, again, discussing a lot of options for 2020 as far as how we should allocate our TSP accounts, or how I'm planning on it. And it should be noted again that neither myself nor any of the other admins or owners associated with TSPCalc are financial advisors. We do this as basically a layman trying to do the best we can to improve our own TSP balances. So take everything we say with a grain of salt. There's plenty of risk involved with what we do, and we are all comfortable with that risk. And I encourage everybody else learning about seasonal strategies to do your own research and making sure that it's the best option for your retirement and that you're comfortable with the risk associated with that. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in. I've got a nice little spreadsheet here set up. Okay, so I went ahead and put down a whole bunch of stuff here to talk about. Right off the bat, let's go ahead and take a look at the year in review and kind of see where seasonal strategies ended up taking over. There was two main months that was kind of the separation months for 57-171, which is the strategy that I followed almost religiously, January through today, which is December 28th. There was one deviation in February where I went to the F fund instead of the G, and it ended up working out for me. I ended up catching an extra 0.1%. And really, there was no rhyme or reason for that. It was kind of Jaron and I messing around and me wanting to take the lead on him early. And it was a pretty small risk on that move. So, but it's pretty interesting. We take a look at August here. We were out of the month for most of August, and then we kind of came in at the end, and it was an 8% swing over the S. It had been pretty neck and neck, and S was beating us, I think, up until this point. And this was a huge swing. This is when everything kind of swapped over. And then again in October, it was over a 2% swing. So that was basically a 10% swing in a 2-month window. And it flipped the script with the S and seasonal strategies. And sometimes that's how it goes. And it's pretty fascinating taking a look at what 57-171, it's in the market 65% of the time. I've got the strategy here, 57-171, time in C, time in S, and time in I, and it comes out to 65%. So even being out of the market over 35% of the time, we still managed to, as of today, we're beating the C fund by 1.89%, the S fund by 6.08%, and the I fund by 11.31%. And then I kind of put the 50-50 CS split, which is a pretty popular buy and hold spread there. We're leading them, or 57-171 is leading them by almost 4% on the year. Now, if you've watched some of my other videos, you'll kind of understand that even 1% is a huge beat. Not to mention, we've got 6 and 4 and almost 2. I mean, this was a great year for seasonal strategies. And so, kind of cool here. My beginning balance of 2019 was $77,475.24. I had almost $14,500 in contributions with my own and agency matching. And I gained $28,160.54, which put me at 120,106.61, which was that number was not even in my realm of assertion. I mean, I had it's really fun to kind of look at these numbers long term and really want that 30% to be the reality. And it was this year. And now, granted, the CNS are also nipping at the heels at 30%, and so it's kind of an interesting dichotomy when people are talking about seasonal strategies. I think it's important to have realistic goals, even though these numbers are showing huge historic returns. As we've said over and over again, is that those historic returns should not be used as a baseline forever. Things change. 2018, as we've discussed multiple times, was another instance where seasonal strategies didn't quite live up to the 30% expectations. And again, the goal should always be not to return 30% a year, but to beat buy and hold. And if we do that, we're going to count ourselves successful. And personally, I've beaten buy and hold 2 out of 3 years I've done seasonal. And if I would have stuck with my strategy last year, I would have beaten buy and hold all 3 years. But that wasn't the case, and that's okay. That's a live and learn situation. So let me switch here. So looking ahead to 2020, it's been pretty well documented that I am going with strategy 85-4-25. And the big change on that, if you can see here, is it's in the market only 58% of the time, but it has 0 iFund. And I've kind of discussed my trepidation with the iFund and why it's not my favorite fund. It's not that it's not successful. I mean, God forbid Jaron's making a run here. He's at iFund for the last couple of days, and it had almost a 1% flip over the S fund yesterday, which brought Jaron within striking distance of me at the end of the year. And gosh, I really hope that doesn't happen. I don't want to have to listen to that for the next 12 months. That being said, it's got a lot of promise going forward. So I've got it pulled up here. And so this year, that strategy is actually at 38.17%. And the big change, of course, is going to be in January. As we've discussed previously, Jaron created 57.171 on the hunch that January was going to rebound from the Christmas Eve low point of 2018, and that it was probably beneficial for us to be in the S fund for the entirety of the month. Since then, I have gone back and found a pretty strong correlation that when one of the two things is true, if December creates or has a situation where the S fund makes greater than 1% there or less than 1%, there's a direct correlation to January about 75% of the time. So a positive December greater than 1% usually equates to a negative January or a less than 1% gain. And if January and vice versa, if December makes less than 1%, January typically makes more than 1%. And that happens 75% of the time. 10 out of the last 15 years, that correlation has been true. The notable bad correlation to that, I can actually show you here, was in December of 2015. This was probably the worst non-correlative month. But you can do this, take a look yourself, pull up the S fund and take a look at December versus January's going back. And I use the S fund because January is typically better that's where we end up the second half of the month. But you can see here in December of 2015, we were down almost 4%. And then in January of 2016, we dropped an additional 8.72%. So it's not always a perfect correlation, and most of those gains historically come actually in the second half of January, which is why most of the strategies have you're out of the market the first 2 weeks and in the S fund the second half. So one more thing I wanted to discuss, another strategy was actually Matt's strategy. We've had a variety of members who have expressed some hesitancy with which makes sense, jumping into seasonal strategies because they haven't always worked, and sometimes they can seem a little bit pie in the sky looking at 30% return averages. And so I wanted to show Matt's strategy for next year and kind of talk about it. I don't think that people give this enough credit. Matt's strategy is a 100% equity strategy, meaning that you are in the market 100% of the time. And theoretically, you won't be missing out on the massive gains that could happen if if you're following a strategy that is in G or F and you're missing those gains, but you're also going to likely hit some of the bigger swings in the negative as well. It's a little bit, it's kind of a hybridized buy and hold. But if you take a look at it historically, it averages almost 5%, or actually almost 6% more than the C fund, and about 5%, 4.5% more than the S fund. Matt's strategy averages 16.31% over the last 15 years. And you can see here it's actually returned 38% this year. And all that is moving between C and S at times when C and S are historically at their strongest of the year. And it's actually one of my favorite strategies. It's kind of boring and it's not as flashy, but it really it's historically gotten the job done. In fact, I think out of, if you take the way that his strategy compares, if you've got 16 different years for C and 16 different years for S, so you've got 32 different times. I think Matt's strategy would have kind of only lost 6 of those, so it had been better than C or S 26% of the, or 26 times out of 32 over the last 15 years. So it's pretty good. And if there's some people that are kind of on the fence with seasonals but kind of want to take a little more control of their account, I think Matt's all equity strategy is a fantastic middle ground on that. And I think, long term, it may actually end up being the best strategy as we continue to get more years of data and show that maybe the most consistent way to beat the market is to play the margins within the all equities. So something to take a look at. Again, that's strategy 86104. You can see that up here in the corner. Okay, guys. So just to kind of wrap it up here a little bit, there's, especially looking ahead to 2020. There's a pretty strong correlation heading into January. And again, I'm not a financial advisor, and I certainly don't have a crystal ball in the market, but it does seem that the market appears to be a little overbought at the moment. And, other individuals such as Scott Zane, who runs the Thrift Savings Plan group and the Swing Traders group, he actually swung out in November. And he's kind of seeing the same thing. The market has kind of run up on this trade deal and maybe, seasonal, tendencies, and the market's kind of been rising without a lot of strong indicators to give it a reason to continue to go. And so I wouldn't be all that surprised to see the seasonals hit on the first half of January. I wouldn't be surprised to see a small pullback on that. So kind of take a look for that going forward. That's about all I've got looking ahead and looking back. If you guys have, I've got a list of other videos that are coming in the future discussing some of the some basic things, and then of course some more advanced things. And if you guys have ideas or other things that you want to see in future videos, feel free to drop me a message on Facebook, leave it in the comments down below, or send a message to the TSPCalc Facebook group. I'm also a admin on that for that page, so I'll see the message come across. And again, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. And as always, going into 2020, the goal is to beat Jaron. So everybody who's on my strategy, make sure that when we beat him in 2020, we rub it pretty hard in his face. So anyways, thanks guys for watching.